Hello, explorers of the Sky Dome and the Blue Horseman. Today, we dive into the ancient creation epics of Central Asian Turkic mythology that began with mud and water. My life was shaped by the eternal power of Tengri and the first arrow the sky god shot into the heavens. In the beginning, there was only water and the goose Ulgan. It is believed the goose brought up the clay for Tengri to create the world. But the goose's attempt to keep some of the created land for himself, due to arrogance, brought the first chaos to life. We watch the endless war between Ulgan, the god of goodness, and Erlik Khan, the dark lord of the underworld. This war determines the cosmic order and the life of the Turkic tribes. Don't miss the secrets of this epic life, spanning 9 layers of the underworld and 17 layers of the sky of our ancestors. Don't forget to subscribe. In the beginning, before the earth and sky were created, there was only infinite water and a supreme god flying over it. In Turkish legends, this supreme being is called Karahan. Alone on the vast, dark waters, Karahan was in deep solitude, unsure of what to do. Just then, the waves stirred, and a sacred being with the appearance of a white-bearded old man emerged from the waters. This was a divine power named Akana, appearing in the midst of the white waters. She commanded the supreme god with a voice full of authority, "Create." After saying "create," she dove back into the vast waters and vanished. Upon receiving this divine sign, God Karahan decided to create the universe. First, he created a being named Kigi Person to accompany him. Kigi was the first living being created by God and resembled a human. Karahan and Kigi began to fly together over the infinite waters like 2 black geese. They wandered this way for a while, contemplating how to organize the universe. However, before long, seeds of arrogance fell into Kigi's heart. Kigi wanted to fly higher than Karahan, his creator. The supreme god sensed this insolent desire in Kigi's mind and decided to punish him. He instantly took away Kigi's power of flight. Feeling his wings grow heavy, Kigi could no longer fly and began to fall into the vast water. The one who had just been seized by pride was now struggling in despair. Flailing in the water, Kigi faced the danger of drowning. As he sank into the waters in panic, he regretted his actions and begged God. He asked Karahan for forgiveness, saying, "My supreme God, forgive me." Karahan saw Kigi's remorse and showed mercy. He brought up some soil from the bottom of the vast sea, sprinkled it on the water's surface, and created a small piece of land. He raised a bright star over this soil. Kigi held on to this rocky piece under the star to keep from sinking, thus saving himself from drowning. God, Karahan looked at Kigi, who had settled on this small piece of land that appeared in the middle of the water. It was now time to create the rest of the universe. Calling out to Kigi, he commanded, "Dive to the bottom of the sea and bring me some soil from there." Kigi dove into the vast depths of the sea to fulfill God's command. He filled his palms with some wet soil from the bottom. However, the greed in Kigi's heart had not yet vanished. A malicious intent occurred to him. He would take part of the soil in his palm to God, but hide a small portion in his mouth to secretly try and create his own world later. With this thought, Kigi surfaced to deliver most of the soil to Karahan, but secretly kept a piece in his mouth. Karahan took the soil Kigi brought into his palm. He sprinkled it over the vast water. He voiced his command, saying, "I am creating the earth." With God's power, the sprinkled soil began to expand and grow rapidly. Those tiny particles of soil on the water's surface multiplied in an instant, merged, and turned into a vast earth. Thus, the world was created. Now, there was a huge piece of land, the earth, in the middle of the water. At that very moment, the piece of soil Kigi had secretly hidden in his mouth also obeyed God's command. With Karahan's command to grow, the soil in Kigi's mouth began to expand rapidly. The soil Kigi hid was swelling more and more, filling his mouth and clogging his throat. Kigi became unable to breathe and was about to drown. Realizing the situation, the Supreme God immediately commanded Kigi to spit. Had God's command not arrived in time, Kigi would have choked to death. Kigi expelled the soil from his mouth with a strong breath. Pieces of soil flew from his mouth and scattered around. The first world Karahan created was flat, like a vast plain. However, the soil pieces ejected from Kigi's mouth spread randomly over this plain, piling up. These accumulations formed mountains, hills, and rough terrain on the earth. Because of Kigi's selfishness, the world was no longer entirely flat. High mountains and deep valleys had appeared. God Karahan was very angry at Kigi's disobedience and greed. He scolded Kigi, saying, "You defied my orders and tried to take a share for yourself." Then he gave him the punishment he deserved, saying, "From now on, your name shall be Erlik." He banished Kigi from the realm of the light sky. Erlik was now removed from God's presence and cast into darkness. Supreme God Karahan continued his work. He wanted to bestow life upon the newly created world and enliven it. He grew a great tree with 9 large branches in the center of the earth. Under each branch of this tree, he created a human being. A total of 9 humans came into existence. These became the ancestors of the 9 separate human races on earth. Thus, humans found life from the soil and God's breath and scattered across the world. However, evil was not completely destroyed. The banished Erlik was watching the creation of humans from afar. The beautiful, pure, and good state of these humans created by Karahan swelled Erlik's jealousy. He asked the Supreme God to give these humans to him, saying, "Let them be mine." Karahan naturally rejected this request. He intended to keep humans under his own protection. But the cunning Erlik found a way to tempt humans by using trickery. He whispered lies to them and sowed seeds of arrogance and ambition. Over time, some humans were deceived by Erlik's whispers and lost the purity in their hearts. The Supreme God was very angry at this weakness of the humans he created and at Erlik dragging them into evil. He decided to let humans make their own choices, saying, "Since they have minds, let them choose good and evil themselves." He left them to their own devices for a while. To prevent evil from reigning completely, he assigned a benevolent spirit living in one of the layers of the sky. This good spirit is known as Olgun. Upon God's command, Olgun descended to earth and began to protect and watch over humans. Meanwhile, the cunning Erlik was not idle. He had seen Karahan's magnificence in the supreme sky layer and envied it. Making secret plans, he wanted to establish his own sovereignty. Asking God for permission, he said, "I will also build a sky realm for myself where humans will worship." Although Karahan did not fully understand Erlik's intention, he granted this permission. Using his own dark power, Erlik created a fake heaven, a separate layer in the sky. He placed the evil spirits, demons, and devilish beings he had deceived there. He began to rule in his own sky realm as if he were a god. After a while, the creatures in this fake heaven established by Erlik began to live more comfortably than the good beings under God Karahan's protection. Supreme God Karahan saw what was happening in Erlik's deceitful heaven. Erlik's audacious attitude and his establishing of his own order annoyed God. It was time to intervene. Karahan sent a powerful angel from the realm of light and had Erlik's fake sky layer destroyed. God's angel struck like lightning, shattering the artificial sky Erlik had built. Erlik's fake heaven collapsed with a great crash. The shattered dark sky layer fell to the earth below. The falling pieces formed new mountains, valleys, and forests on the earth. With this destruction, the earth took its final shape. Finally, God Karahan summoned Erlik to his presence. He was determined to give him the heaviest punishment. "From now on," he said, "you shall stay in the deepest land of darkness. You will sit there until the end of the world and will never come up again." He imprisoned Erlik in the deepest layer of the underworld, in pitch darkness where no light reaches. He passed his judgment saying, "Because you betrayed me by seducing the minds of humans, you are condemned to stay there forever." Erlik remained as the lord of the underworld and the symbol of evil. Thus, the eternal balance between good and evil was established. Supreme God, Karahan, withdrew to the 17th layer of the sky, the highest layer of the universe he created. From there, he continued to watch over the entire universe and govern it when necessary. Beolgan took his place on his magnificent throne on the Golden Mountain in the 16th layer of the sky layers. Jian, Anna's sun-mother, shone on the 7th layer, and I, Otter Moonfather, on the 6th layer. Thus, the earth, the sky, and the underworld were created with all their beings. Humans scattered across the earth and multiplied. Sometimes they listened to God Iljan's advice and found the right path. Sometimes they were deceived and strayed into Erlik's dark path. The creation epic reveals the ancient belief of the Turks about the origin of the universe and humanity. In this legend, the struggle between good and evil, the establishment of the world order, and the trial of humanity are told in narrative language. Although Turks later adopted monotheism, characters in the epic such as Karahan, Olgan, Erlik, and Akana continued to live in cultural unity, transforming into concepts of angels or evil spirits in later beliefs. The Bozkurt Grey Wolf epic, one of the most well-known legends of Turkish mythology, is the Bozkurt epic, which links the lineage of the Turks to a grey wolf. This epic tells the story of how the Turkish people survived a difficult period, multiplied again, and rose from their ashes. In very ancient times, before the name Turk was even mentioned, a great Turkish tribe was suddenly raided by enemies. This raid was so violent that the entire tribemen, women, young and old, was put to the sword. The tents were destroyed and burned. The herds of horses were plundered. A whole people was almost completely exterminated. However, there was one who miraculously survived this terrible massacre, a small boy, barely more than a child. When the enemy soldiers saw this innocent and defenseless child, they could not bring themselves to kill him. However, they did not want to let him live either. So, they cut off the child's legs and left him to die in a distant swamp. The wounded child was left all alone in pain and fear. At that desperate moment, nature's compassionate arms embraced the child. A female grey wolf, living in the recesses of the swamp, came to the child. This mother wolf, who had lost her own cub, approached the suffering child as if he were her own. She did not withhold the compassion she showed to her wolf cubs from this human son. She cleaned the child's wounds with her warm tongue. She began to protect and feed him. Days chased days. The wolf brought the meat of animals she hunted to the child. She nursed him with her own milk, ensuring his survival. The child managed to live under the protection of the Bozkurt grey wolf and slowly healed and grew strong. Years passed. the small boy became a young man. The female Bozkurt who raised him was like both a mother and a guardian. When the young man reached puberty, by a twist of fate, an unusual bond was born between this human and the wolf. According to the legend, as a grace of God, the Bozkurt became pregnant by the young man. This sacred wolf carried the seeds of a new generation in her womb. Meanwhile, the enemies realized the tracks of the child they had left in the swamp and returned to kill him. However, the female wolf let no one near the young man. Sensing the danger, she began to flee toward the high mountains in the north. Although enemy soldiers pursued the wolf and the young man, they could not catch them. The female Bozkurt ran and ran. She reached a desolate valley in the foothills of what are now the Altai Mountains, where mysterious caves were located. This was a place hidden from the outside world, surrounded on all four sides by steep mountains, where lush meadows grew virtually a paradise. The wolf took refuge in this sheltered valley and gave birth to her young there. She gave birth to exactly 10 male children. These half-wolf, half-human children grew up in a short time and became strong young men. The valley was cheered by these youths under God's protection. The Bozkurt was both their mother and guardian. Their father's spirit continued to live in them. When the young men reached puberty, they wanted to marry women from the world outside the valley to continue their lineage. In time, each found a wife from outside and married. Thus, the 10 young men born of the wolf mother established their own families. Each of these families formed the core of a separate tribe. As generations passed, the people of the valley multiplied greatly and became a large community. One among them, the bravest and wisest, was chosen as the leader. This leader's name was Ashina gathered this community, descended from the Bozkurt, and introduced them to other tribes outside the mountains. Years later, when the population increased further, the children of the Bozkurt decided to leave the cave and the hidden valley. When they stepped into the outside world, they served the first large community they encountered with their skills. Since they came from inside the Iron Mountains, they were masters of ironworking. They became blacksmiths for the surrounding tribes. They gained fame by making weapons and tools. Thanks to their metalworking skills, they gained great prestige. Over time, these people descended from the Bozkurt began to be known as the Gktrks. According to legend, the ancestor of the Ashina dynasty, the ruling family of the Gktrks, was that child raised by the Bozkurt and his sons born of the wolf mother. This epic tells that the Turkish nation was saved from the danger of extinction thanks to a female wolf, and that it existed and multiplied again. For this reason, in Turkish culture, the Bozkurt is seen not just as an animal, but as a sacred ancestor and a protective symbol. The Turkish people have adopted the grey wolf as a sign of good luck and a savior. The Oguz Kagan epic, one of the most magnificent and comprehensive epics of Turkish mythology, is the Oguz Kagan epic. This epic narrates the legendary adventures of a great Turkish ruler from his birth to his death and the origin of the Turkish tribes. In some accounts, Oguz Kagan is seen as a legendary image of the Hun ruler Meet. Throughout the epic, Oguz Kagan's status as a hero with supernatural traits and his unification of different peoples by conquering the world are told in enthusiastic language. One day, a woman named Kagan, the ruler of a nomadic tribe, gave birth to a male child. This baby was no ordinary baby. When he was born, there were strange marks and extraordinary conditions on his body. His hands and feet resembled wolf claws, and his eyes scattered light around. His mother named him Oguz, From the moment he was born, Ogus showed he was an extraordinary child. As soon as he was born, he suckled milk from his mother's breast only once. After that, he did not want mother's milk again. On the very first day of his infancy, he began to speak. He demanded raw meat, game meat, and Kumi's fermented mare's milk from those around him with a booming voice. Before 40 days had passed, baby Ogus grew rapidly. In 40 days, he could walk on his own. He behaved almost like a little warrior. Ogus matured in a very short time and became a young man unlike any other. His body resembled that of a powerful animal. His legs were as thick as a strong bull's legs, and his chest was as broad as a bear's. His shoulders were flexible and solid like a sable with bright fur. His body was covered with fine hair. Despite his young age, he could herd horses and skillfully tame even the wildest horses. Young Ogus took great pleasure in going out to the countryside and hunting alone. At an age when he was still considered a child, he had become a warrior who chased game and knew how to use a sword and arrow. In that era, in the land where Ogus grew up, there was a vast, dark forest. This forest was home to countless wild animals. The people did not want to approach this great forest lying near the villages because there was a terrible creature living in its depths. This creature was a gigantic dragon. Sometimes it would emerge roaring, catch and swallow herds and even humans, and ravage the area. Villagers and shepherds were terrified of this dragon. No one had been able to enter the forest for days. The people prayed to God in despair, begging for help to be saved from this scourge. Seeing the state of his people, Ogus became very angry. He swore, "I will kill this monster." Although he was still very young, he was a daring hero. One day, he decided to hunt the dragon alone. He took his long spear, his bow, his arrows, his sharp sword, and his sturdy shield with him. He quietly made his way toward the forest. He advanced carefully in the recesses of the forest. First, he hunted a deer. He tied this deer tightly with a thin and flexible willow branch and hung it on a tree trunk. After leaving the deer as bait, he lay in ambush nearby. When he returned to the forest before dawn, the scene he saw showed that his plan had worked. The giant dragon had fallen for the trap and found the deer tied to the tree. The hungry creature had swallowed the deer in one bite. Ogus saw fresh blood traces and broken bones where the dragon had torn the deer apart. He muttered, so the first attempt was successful. The next night, Ogus Kagan hunted a bear this time. He killed a huge grizzly bear and tied it to a tree in the depths of the forest with his own gold belt. The bear was a large and powerful animal. If the dragon wanted to eat it too, it would be well satiated. Ogus left the bear he tied to the tree with the gold belt as bait and lay in ambush again. When he returned to the forest before dawn broke, he noticed that the dragon had come and torn the bear apart as well. The bear's blood and fur remained on the ground. The dragon had devoured it too. Ogus Kakan's eyes shone with ambition. Now it was his turn. This time he would defeat the monster by risking his own life. When the darkness of night fell upon the forest, Ogus crouched at the foot of a tree. He put his shield in front of him and began to wait on alert. Late at night, the giant dragon emerged again, dragging its huge body. First, it searched around for food. Finding neither deer nor bear, it noticed Ogus hiding behind his shield at the foot of the tree. The hungry monster growled and advanced toward Ogus with one move of its giant head. The dragon tried to knock over the shield in front of Ogus. Although Ogus Kakan's shield shook with that powerful blow, The young hero did not yield. He plunged the long spear in his hand into the monster's chest with all his might. The iron tip of the spear pierced the dragon's scaly skin and penetrated to its heart. The monster roared in pain. It made the surroundings tremble. Oguz Kagan immediately drew his sharp sword and severed the dragon's large head from its body in a single stroke. As blood gushed out, the dragon collapsed to the ground with its headless body. This ferocious creature that shook the forest had finally died. With the joy of victory, Oguz Kagan grabbed the dragon's head by its hair and lifted it. As the creature's blood flowed into the soil, an extraordinary silence covered the surroundings. Just then, a strange scene occurred. A large falcon called a lakin glided down from the sky and landed on the monster's torn body. The bird began to peck at the dragon's exposed intestines. Seeing this scene, Oguz Kagan became angry again, thinking, "This rampant bird is benefiting from the share of victory that came from my hand." He immediately placed an arrow in his bow. He shot the lakin in a single shot and killed the bird right there. Thus, just as he defeated the monster, he also dealt with the predator that came to eat its flesh. He evaluated the events. First, he used the deer as bait. The dragon ate the deer easily. Then he left the bear. The dragon defeated it too. However, his iron spear was enough to defeat the dragon. Then he saw the falcon. That bird was wild enough to eat the dragon's internal organs, but Oguz's bow and arrow were enough to kill it. This meant there was a cycle of power in nature. While great powers defeated one another, in the end, the weapon made of metal, processed by mind and technology, prevailed. Oguz Kagan realized that the real secret of his victory lay in his intelligence and the quality of the weapon in his hand as much as his courage. After this internal accounting, he took the severed head of the dragon and returned to his village. The people were grateful to this young hero who eliminated the terrible scourge. They made his bravery legendary. Days passed. Oguz Kagan became famous as a hero who killed a dragon alone in the forest. Everyone began to fear him and speak of him with respect. He, however, did not care about this fame and continued to often stay alone and pray to God. One day, Oguz Kagan began to pray in the depths of the forest again. He was begging the sky god GGK Tengri to give him power. He had lofty goals and dreams in his heart. While he was deep in prayer, suddenly pitch darkness covered his surroundings. A darkness without thunder or clouds descended. Oguz was startled and looked around. Suddenly, a sacred blue pillar of light descended from the sky to the earth. This was a light so bright that it was brighter than the sun and the moon. It turned night into day. Oguz Kagan walked toward the direction where the light fell with surprise and curiosity. When he approached the center of the beam of light, he encountered an astonishing sight. Right inside the blue light, there was a girl sitting alone on the ground. The girl was so beautiful, so attractive that Oguz Kagan was mesmerized. The girl's face shone like the moon. Her eyes sparkled like stars. There was a crown of light shining like the pole star on her head. Whenever she smiled, she illuminated the surroundings. It was as if the sky itself was rejoicing. As soon as Oguz Kagan saw this girl in light, he lost his mind. A fire fell into his heart. He fell in love with this beauty. He approached the girl. He thought she was a sacred gift sent from the sky. Without hesitation, he decided to marry the girl. He took this mysterious young girl from there and brought her to his tribe. A magnificent wedding was held in a short time. This fairy girl from the skies became Oghuz Kakan's first wife. This girl, who conquered Oghuz's heart with her dazzling beauty, became pregnant before long. 9 months and 10 days later, a birth took place. The young woman gave birth to 3 male children. Oghuz Kagan named these 3 sons with his own hands. He named the first child Jian Sun. He named the second child I Moon, and to the third child he gave the name Yildiz Star. These names were a sign of Oghuz's reverence for the sky and celestial lights. While the happiness of Oghuz Kagan and his first wife from the sky continued, Oghuz decided to go on a great hunt again after a while. While wandering alone in the vast steppes and forests, he lost his way and arrived at the shore of a lake. A small island rose in the middle of the lake. Oghuz Kagan saw a strange tree on the island. A brilliant light was radiating from the hollow of the huge tree. When he approached with curiosity, he noticed a girl sitting all alone in the hollow of the tree. This girl was at least as beautiful and impressive as the first one. Her hair waved like a river, and her eyes shone deep blue like the sky. Her teeth were as white and shiny as pearls. The girl was like the spirit of the earth itself. She symbolized the virginity and fertility of nature. When Oghuz Kagan saw this mysterious girl, his heart began to beat fast again. He loved her at first sight. He took the girl from the island and took her to his homeland. This beautiful girl became Oghuz Kakan's second wife. In time, this second wife also became pregnant. After days and nights chased each other, the time of birth came. She also gave birth to 3 male children. Oghuz Kagan gave meaningful names to these 3 sons as well. He named the first one GGK Sky, the second one Dock Mountain, and the third one Dani's Sea. Thus, Oghuz Kagan had 6 sons. The first 3 from the mother, from the sky, sun, moon, star. The last 3 from the mother, from the earth, sky, mountain, sea. Oghuz Kagan had now left his youth behind and become a mature ruler. He seemed to have received both the sacred graces of the sky and the abundance of the earth. His 6 sons would carry his lineage into the future. Oghuz prayed to Tengri with a great sense of gratitude. Then he decided to organize a magnificent feast that would be etched in memories. He sent word to all the beys and heroes in his country and the leaders of neighboring communities. He announced that a magnificent toy feast lasting 40 days and 40 nights would be given. Oghuz Kakan's table was overflowing with countless blessings. Guests came to the ceremony in droves from far and near. Tables were set in 40 rows. 40 kinds of food were prepared. Kumis, the foamy drink made from mare's milk, was filled into skins like flowing rivers. Meat piles like mountains were cooked. Copious lutes and drums were played. Bards sang epics praising Oghuz's bravery. Everyone ate, drank, and had fun at this feast that lasted for days. At the end of the toy, Oghuz Kagan made his expected speech. He stood up in the presence of all the guests and addressed the people with his booming voice. I have become your Kagan. Take bows and shields and be ready for war. Fortune is on our side. The howling of the Bozkart shall now be our war cry. With these words, he openly declared his desire to conquer the whole world. This speech instilled courage in the hearts of those present. Then Oghuz sent envoys in all 4 directions and sent letters to neighboring countries. In these edicts and declarations, Oghuz Kagan stated his claim to world domination and indicated that he expected obedience from everyone. He announced that those who submitted to him would be accepted as friends, and those who resisted would be crushed by his armies. This powerful address spread in waves to distant lands. In that era, a golden Kagan, Altyn Kagan, was ruling in the western lands, close to Oghuz Kagan. The golden Kagan was a ruler famous for his wealth, who had accumulated gold and silver treasures. When he received Oghuz Kagan's letter, he did not resist much. Thinking it is futile to oppose such a powerful Kagan, he recognized Oghuz's superiority. He reported his loyalty by sending countless gold, silver, rubies, and priceless jewels as tribute. He sent news, saying, "I bow to your command. I want to be your friend." Oghuz Kagan was pleased with the golden Kagan's obedience and accepted him as a friend. However, not everyone was so docile. Again, in that period, a mighty ruler named Urim Kagan was ruling to the west of Oghuz Kagan. As his name implies, Urim Kagan was the great Kagan of the west. He had many soldiers and countless cities. His empire was vast, his armies strong. When Oghuz's envoy reached Urim Kagan's palace and read the Kagan's letter, Urim flew into a rage. He shouted to the envoy's face, "I recognize no one's command. I especially will not listen to the word of Oghuz, who sticks his nose in from distant lands." He gave no answer to Oghuz Kagan's edict. He turned the envoy away with insults. When this insolent news reached Oghuz Kagan, Oghuz frowned in anger. He immediately gathered his armies. Opening his banners, he decided to go on a campaign against Urim Kagan. Mounting countless soldiers on horses, he set off toward the west. They advanced for days and nights. After traveling a long way, they encountered a great water. This water was called the Murin Volga. It was a wide river with a strong current. Beyond the river, Urim Kagan's lands began. Oghuz Kagan and his army set up camp on the eastern bank of the river. Before long, Urim Kagan also gathered his great army and confronted Oghuz. A fierce battle broke out between the two armies. Arrows darkened the sky. Swords flashed like lightning. The clash was so violent that the water of the Atil River flowed red from the spilled blood. At the end of the battle that lasted for days, fortune smiled upon Oghuz Kagan. Oghuz Kagan routed Urim's armies. Urim Kagan barely saved his life and fled the battlefield. Advancing into Urim's country, Oghuz captured his capital. He seized Urim Kagan's treasures. Countless spoils were collected. Gold, silver, and precious stones were piled in Oghuz's tents. Urim's people had to bow to Oghuz. Having obtained great wealth and power in the west, Oghuz Kagan continued on his way. Urim Kagan also had a brother. His name was Uruz Bey. As soon as Uruz Bey heard that his elder brother had been defeated, he sought a remedy. He sent his young son to a sturdy castle at the peak of the mountains. This castle was on top of a high mountain, surrounded by cliffs. While leaving, Uruz Bey sternly advised his son, "Guard the castle well. Do not leave there until the wars are over. If anyone comes, resist at the cost of your life." The young son locked himself in the castle in line with this advice. Shortly after, Oghuz Kagan learned of this castle as well and directed his army there. He besieged the castle. When Uruz Bey's son saw Oghuz and his enormous army from the castle walls, he realized there was only one thing to do: surrender. Sending word from the castle, he stated that he wanted to give a large amount of gold and silver as tribute. He sent a letter to Oghuz Kagan saying, "You are my Kagan, my elder. My father's opposition to you is not my fault. I am willing to bow down. I will pay my tax and will not depart from your friendship." These words pleased Oghuz Kagan, saying, The young hero acted wisely. He accepted his obedience. Rewarding the young man, he gave him the name The meaning of this name was one who sends gold. Oghuz considered Eurys's son a friend and attached him to himself. Oghuz Kagan continued his conquests with his army. While advancing, a vast river appeared before him. This river was the Volga itself. Oghuz Kagan stopped and watched the raging waters of the river. He thought, how shall we cross this huge water? One of the clever and skillful soldiers in the army, Ulu Orjubey, stepped forward. There were plenty of trees and thick branches near the river. He immediately had the soldiers under his command cut down trees. He had strong rafts and platforms made from these trees. The soldiers managed to reach the opposite bank of the river on logs tied together. Oghuz Kagan was very happy about this. Turning to his bey, who offered him the solution, he rewarded him. He said, "You stay here as a bey. Your name shall now be Kipchak." Thus, the name of the Kipchak tribe was born from this praise of Oghuz. The army marched west for a while longer. Again, a mysterious guide appeared on the road before them. This was a sky-maned, gigantic male wolf. Its fur shone a bluish-grey color, like the steppe sky. Its eyes sparkled almost like fire. The wolf suddenly moved to the very front of the army and began to advance as if showing them the way. Oghuz Kagan and his soldiers began to follow this sacred animal in astonishment. The bozkurt would stop occasionally and look back. It would howl as if saying, "Follow me." Oghuz believed that this wolf was a guide sent by Tengri. He immediately jumped on his horse and chased after the wolf. The whole army followed him. The wolf went ahead, and Oghuz Kagan and his cavalry crossed geographies behind it. During a break, Oghuz's favorite horse, a piebald stallion, got spooked and ran away. The horse, running further away, climbed to the peaks of the snowy mountains. This was a cold mountain with constantly ice-covered white peaks. That is why it was called the Ice Mountain Buzz Dagi. Oghuz Kagan stared after his horse. He was very sad. The stallion had disappeared from sight. Finding it was difficult. One of the fearless heroes in the army stepped forward, saying, "I will find it." He threw himself into the task. He climbed to the summit of that freezing mountain alone. 9 days later, he returned holding the horse's halter. When he delivered the stallion to its owner, he himself was covered in snow from head to toe, turned white. Oghuz Kagan admired this hero's courage and loyalty. He called out to him, "You be the head of the beys in this vicinity. Your name shall be Erlik." Thus, the name of the Erlik tribe was born from this wise event. As the march continued, a strange structure appeared in front of the army. This was something like a giant house or castle standing alone in the middle of the steppe. Its walls were made of pure gold. Its windows shone with the glitter of silver. Its roof was forged from iron. However, the only problem was that the door of this giant structure was closed. No one could enter. When Oghuz Kagan saw this golden house, he chose one of the skillful men in his army. A capable blacksmith warrior named Tmrd stepped forward. Oghuz gave him an order: "Open the structure. After you open it, join us." Tmrd pulled at the golden door with his strong arms. With a skillful move, he broke the lock and opened the door. He saw that there were enormous treasures inside. However, without touching the loot, he went after the army. Oghuz Kagan rewarded this success of Tmrd. He said to him, "Your name shall be Erlik." Thus, the name of the Erlik tribe was also given by Oghuz Kagan. The sky-fed bozkart proceeded in front for a while longer. Then it stopped at a place and did not walk. Oguz Kagan ordered his army to stop as well. This was a grassless, barren place. The army was tired as a result of long campaigns, but had covered a path full of victories. A ruler named Arti Kagan was ruling in these lands, and he confronted Oguz with his army. A new battle broke out. The sky darkened with rain of arrows. The clashing of swords filled the steppe. Oguz Kagan emerged victorious in this war as well. He killed Arti Kagan with his own hand. He routed the enemy army. After this victory, all the treasures of the Arti country passed into Oguz Kagan's hands. So much booty was captured that it took days to load onto camels, horses, and oxen. The army became even stronger with this wealth. At this point, an ingenious person in Oguz Kagan's army made an invention. This skillful master's name was Barmagan. He set up a new mechanism to carry all that collected goods and booty. He made a wheeled cart from trees. This cart was designed in a way that oxen or horses could pull. For the first time, people there saw a wheeled vehicle. Those who heard the kanga, kyangia sounds this vehicle made while moving watched it in amazement. The name Koni was given to this innovation made by Canis became the indispensable freight carts of Turkish tribes from that day on. After long campaigns, Oguz Kagan went to many lands, from east to west, north to south. He brought many tribes to their knees. He had begun to feel that he was getting old. He thought it was time to divide his country and the vast lands he obtained among his 6 sons. He gathered a great Kurultai assembly. He invited all the beys and commanders. His 6 sons were also present at the Kurultai. Just in those days, one of the white-bearded wise viziers in Oguz Kagan's close circle had a mysterious dream. This wise person's name was Ulutark. In his dream, he saw a golden bow and 3 silver arrows descending from the sky. The golden bow extended from east to west, covering the sky. The 3 silver arrows had flown toward the northern horizon. Ulutark told this dream to Oguz Kagan. Oguz sensed that this was a divine sign. Indeed, a while later, one day when Oguz Kagan's 6 sons went hunting, they found something strange. A huge golden bow shining brightly lay on the sands in the desert. A little further on, they found 3 silver arrows. In astonishment, they brought these gifts fallen from the sky to their father. Remembering the meaning of the dream, Oguz Kagan was very happy. With smiling eyes, he took the golden bow in his hand. Without thinking, he broke the bow into 3 pieces. Then, turning to his elder sons, Gianai and Yildiz, he said, "Oh, my elder sons, let this bow be yours. Be like the bow and shoot the arrows up to the sky," he said, distributing the golden bow pieces to them. Then he gave the silver arrows to his younger sons, GGK, Doc, and Danes. "Oh, my younger sons, the arrows are for you. The bow shoots the arrow. You too, like arrows, reach the target immediately," he advised. Thus, he divided the sons of Oguz into 2 main branches. He separated his 3 elder sons into the organization named Bozakla, and his 3 younger sons into Kokla. After this event, Oguz Kagan took his 6 sons into his presence. He explained to them how he would divide his country. He gave the lands in the east to the Bozak branch, that is, the lineage of sun, moon, and star. He gave the lands in the west to the Ekok branch, that is, the lineage of sky, mountain, and sea. Each son would rule in these lands with his own children and tribes. Oghuz Kagan had 24 grandsons from his 6 sons. Each grandson gave his name to an Oghuz tribe. Thus, 24 Oghuz tribes were organized under the roof of Bozakla and Kakon. As Oghuz Kagan approached the end of his life, he experienced the peace of leaving behind a united and strong people. God had granted him a measure of the desire to rule the whole world. Countless lands had gathered under his banner. Neighboring tribes had become either his friends or subject states. Thanks to Oghuz's unification, a powerful empire was born around the name Turk. Finally, when he came to the end of his life, Oghuz Kagan closed his eyes to life. He left the following advice to his children, grandchildren, and all his people: be united, rule justly, be brave and merciful. Those descending from his lineage established strong states for many more centuries by following these counsels. The Oghuz Kagan epic is a product of the common imagination of the Turkish nation. In this epic, the supernatural and the real are intertwined. Sacred guides like the Bozkurt lights descending from the sky, giant dragons, magic bows and arrows. All these elements reflect the symbols in the depths of Turkish culture. Oghuz Kagan is depicted as an invincible warrior on the one hand and a wise leader on the other. Turks see their ideal ancestors in his person. For this reason, the Oghuz Kagan epic has been passed down from language to language for centuries and voiced with epic poems from the copuses of bards. The Ergenekon epic, another story holding an important place among Turkish epics, is the Ergenekon epic. This epic tells how the Turks were reborn after a defeat and regained their freedom by melting iron mountains. Ergenekon is almost a symbol of resurrection and salvation for the Turks. Once upon a time, a great trap was set for one of the Turkish lands by neighboring tribes. These numerically superior enemies suddenly attacked and invaded the Turkish homeland. At the end of bloody wars lasting for days, the Turks suffered a heavy defeat. Tents were set on fire. Houses were destroyed. Many people were put to the sword. Almost the entire tribe was destroyed in this attack. The Turkish land was ruined. However, there was a small group of people who survived this carnage. According to legend, a young warrior named Kion, descending from a Turkish bey named Ilhan, and his nephew, Unkazi, managed to save their lives with their wives. Their homeland fallen, their relatives martyred. These two families jumped on their horses and fled far away to survive. Kayan and Unkazi decided to look for a place far from danger where the enemy could not find them. They crossed steep mountains and deep valleys that appeared before them. They rode for days. They passed snowy peaks. After a while, they encountered an interesting sign. Herds of wild sheep were going toward the mountains along a path known to no one. They decided to follow the tracks of these mountain goats. The narrow path the sheep walked on stretched between rocks at the foot of a high mountain. They led their horses through this pass in single file. When they crossed the pass and arrived at the other side, the scene they encountered astonished them. This was a secret valley surrounded by mountains on all 4 sides, completely isolated from the outside world. Inside the valley, there were gushing streams and springs, lush green meadows, fruit trees, and various kinds of game animals adorned this valley. It was almost a place like paradise. When Kayen and Unkasi saw these fertile lands with their wives, they knelt down and gave thanks. Infinite thanks to Tengri who gave us this shelter, they prayed. They believed that God had guided them here. They had found their new home. They decided to stay in this remote, hidden paradise. They named the valley It is rumored that this name means iron place, land of abundance. Ergenekon became the home that embraced them and where they found life again. Kayun and Unkezi raised their children here. Time passed. The children became adults and married. Generations of people multiplied in the Ergenekon Valley. With each new generation, the population increased a bit more. People lived in peace in this valley rich in iron. They cultivated the land, hunted, and multiplied. Moreover, there was no trace here of the enemy that destroyed them outside. They were safe. Years chased years, centuries chased centuries. According to rumor, Turks lived a quiet life in Ergenekon for exactly 400 years. They had now multiplied in number, transforming from a small community into a large nation. The herds had increased so much that they could no longer fit in the valley. Space had begun to narrow for people as well. The young generations listened to stories of the outside world from their ancestors with curiosity. One day they dreamed of going beyond those mountains, because Ergenekon's fertile lands were struggling to support the crowded population. Upon this, the people of the valley gathered and held a kura. They reminded that their ancestors had passed through a pass when they came here. However, since centuries had passed, they had long forgotten the location of that secret pass. The young men scattered in all four directions and searched the surroundings of the mountains. But they could not find the exit from Erg. It was as if they were stuck inside a box surrounded by iron walls. Just then, a wise blacksmith emerged among the people of the valley. This person had carefully examined the structure of the mountains. He had noticed iron ore shining in veins among the rocks of the mountains. The blacksmith gave an idea to his people. "Our mountains are made of iron ore," he said. "If we can melt this iron and open a path, we can go out to the outside world." Everyone was surprised. At first, they could not believe such a thing was possible. But there was no other choice. They agreed to the plan suggested by the blacksmith. They immediately started preparations. They stacked wood and coal in large piles in front of the iron part of the mountain. They arranged rows of wood and coal on the rocky slope where the iron was and turned the foothills of the mountain almost into a woodshed. Then, with a signal, they ignited them all at the same time. A tremendous fire flared up. It burned until the iron vein of the mountain glowed like embers. They constantly blew air into the roaring fire with giant bellows they placed at 70 different points. The iron finally could not withstand it. It began to melt like red lava. A gap large enough for a loaded camel to pass opened on the mountain slope. The people of Ergenekon had gained a gate opening to the outside world for the first time in 400 years. The Turks jumped on their horses with great joy. They drove their sheep and cattle before them and passed through the narrow pass in droves. They turned their faces to the sun and wind and took a breath of fresh air. They set off to return to their ancestors' old homeland. They swore an oath to hold accountable the enemies who had destroyed them 400 years ago. According to the legend, the Turks, emerging from Ergenekon, marched upon their old enemies. They formed a new army and took revenge on those who had driven them from their lands. After this victory, where they avenged their ancestors, they regained their independence. The day they emerged from Ergenekon coincided exactly with the beginning of spring, the time when night and day are equal. Nature seemed to be celebrating their rebirth. That is why the exit from Ergenekon began to be celebrated by Turks as the spring festival every year. This festival day was named Nev. According to rumor, from that day on, Turks held a ceremony every year to commemorate the moment they melted the Iron Mountain and gained freedom. A piece of iron would be heated in the fire, and when it became glowing red, it would be brought to the Kagan's presence. The Kagan would place the red iron on the anvil and strike it a few times with his hammer. Then all the beys would come in turn and strike a hammer blow on that iron. This was a symbol of gaining liberty by melting the Iron Mountain. At the same time, it was a celebration of the arrival of spring and the revival of nature. This tradition was kept alive among Turks for ages. Even today, the iron forging ritual continues in many Turkish communities during spring festivals. The Ergenekon epic impressively tells how Turks did not lose hope in difficult times and how they were resurrected. On the one hand, it emphasizes the importance of blacksmithing and metal technology in Turkish culture. As in the Bozkurt epic, there is a theme of a cave, a hidden valley, and multiplication again in this one too. However, the main emphasis in Ergenekon is that as long as there is unity and reason is used, no obstacle is too great to overcome. This epic has always been remembered, especially in the Turks' search for national identity, and has been a source of morale and inspiration in troubled times. The Uyghur origin, Turay epic, another origin legend in Turkish mythology, is the Turay epic of the Uyghurs. This epic narrates that the lineage of the Uyghur Turks was born from a sacred union, descending from a divine ancestor. In some aspects, it contains themes similar to the Bozkurt epic. However, this time, although the hero of the story is again a Bozkurt, the events take place in the Uyghur country. Once upon a time, a mighty Kagan ruled in the lands where the ancestors of the Uyghur Turks lived. This Kagan had 2 daughters whose beauty was legendary. The girls were so beautiful, so attractive that those who saw them were amazed. Their unique beauty had become legendary among the people. People whispered, "These girls are not worthy of mortal men on earth." It is as if God created them especially to be his own consorts. The girl's father, the Uyghur Kagan, had also heard these rumors. The Kagan, who loved his children very much, was influenced by these words and did not want to marry his daughters to ordinary people. He thought, they are so rare that only a god can be a spouse to them. He made his decision. He would hide his daughters in a place where people could not reach and wait for the supreme Tengri's discretion. He had a high tower built on top of a mountain in the far north of his country, where birds did not fly and caravans did not pass. This tower was like a castle with locked doors, high enough to touch the clouds, surrounded by walls. The Kagan placed his legendary beautiful daughters in this tower in tears. He said to them, "I am not imprisoning you here for nothing. My heart is not willing, but fate is such. My heart desires that your husbands be not mortal humans, but envoys of God himself. Therefore, wait here with patience. If the supreme Tengri has chosen a suitor for you, he will come and find you." The 2 sisters remained all alone in the tower. Time passed slowly. Their hearts were sad, but their faith was full. They prayed to God every day, asking him to protect them. Their father offered sacrifices to God every day. "O Supreme Tengri, hear my prayers. Send a fortune from the sky for my daughters," he begged. Days and nights chased each other. For a long time, no one came. At night, the girls would look at the moon from the tower window and converse with the stars. Until one night, shadows began to appear on the horizon. That night, while the full moon was shining in the sky, a grey wolf's howl coming from the distant steppe broke the silence. The girls immediately ran to the window. They saw a silhouette approaching the tower in the moonlight. This was a majestic male wolf. His fur shone a grey colour like the steppe sky. His eyes glowed red like blood clots. The younger sister shouted with joy, "Look, sister, our father's prayers have been answered. The sky god sent our wish in the form of a wolf." Her sister hesitated at first. "I am afraid. Perhaps this is a test," she said. But the younger girl was determined. "No, I feel it. This arrival is a divine sign," she said, and headed for the tower door. The little princess went down the tower stairs, opened the locked door, and went out. She immediately recognized the Bozkurt in the dark. The wolf seemed to be waiting for her. The girl approached the wolf. Gently bowing her head, she let him love her. The girl overcame her fear and stroked the wolf's neck. At that moment, an invisible bond was established between them. According to the legend, a celestial power had sent this wolf and given permission for him to marry the girl. Indeed, the girl went after the wolf. She left the tower. Her sister watched their departure with sadness, but helplessly. Time passed. The little princess lived together with the wolf. They did not know how to explain this secret to their father, but nature found its own way. The young girl became pregnant after a while. When the time came, the female Bozkurt prepared a safe shelter for her. In that shelter, the girl gave birth to healthy children. Not just one child, she had many sons. According to rumor, all the children born from this sacred union were male, and each would be the ancestor of a separate tribe in the future. While the babies were born and growing, an interesting situation was noticed. The crying of these children was not like normal babies. Their voices almost resembled wolf howls. The wolf spirit inside them was reflected in their voices. The elder sister, who was left all alone in the tower after her sister left with the wolf, had to tell her father what happened after a while. Although the Uyghur Kagan was very angry at first, his anger subsided as his daughter's children multiplied. They were his grandchildren, carrying his own blood. Their only difference was that their father was a grey wolf. The Kagan considered this a divine sign. It meant that Tengri had accepted his prayers in this way. He had sent a groom who was not in human form but had continued his lineage. The Kagan accepted his daughter and grandchildren back. He took them all under his protection. The male Bozkurt disappeared. Perhaps he instantly rose to Tengri's presence. His duty was complete. The children he left behind were the beginning of a great lineage. Each of these children established his own tribe in the future. As generations progressed, the peoples descending from them spread to vast geographies. According to legend, two main branches emerged from the children mentioned in this origin story: the 9 Oghuz and 10 Uyghur tribes. It was told that these tribes howled just like a wolf when going to war. Their howling was a memento from their wolf father. The Turai epic is a story that gives pride to the Uyghur Turks by emphasizing that their lineage is based on a divine source. The migration G, c'est epic. The G, c'est migration. Epic tells a legend holding an important place in the history of the Uyghur Turks. This epic explains with a mythological perspective why the Uyghurs had to leave their homelands. At the same time, it is a continuation of the Turai epic, because it shows how the sacred elements in the origin of the Uyghurs affected the migration in their fate. Once upon a time, there was a mountain named Hulan in the Uyghur land. 2 rivers, named Tula and Sulinj, flowed from the foothills of this mountain. The Uyghurs lived a happy life in the fertile lands between these 2 rivers. One day, toward midnight, A mysterious light descended from the sky onto the trees on this Hulan mountain. In the pitch-black night without moonlight, this divine halo of light that suddenly appeared stretched toward the summit of the mountain and shone. The people at the foot of the mountain watched this celestial light with a mixture of fear and admiration. The blue light continued to shine on the same tree every night for 9 months and 10 days. It was as if a bridge of light had formed between the sky and the earth. At the end of 9 months and 10 days, one night, a swelling occurred on the trunk of the tree. The huge trunk of the tree had swelled as if it were pregnant. The halo of light continued to stay on that swelling. Finally, the trunk of the tree split, and 5 children appeared from within, looking like balls of light. Yes, the tree had given birth to 5 children, almost like a mother. Faced with this miraculous event, the local people were astonished. They immediately took those children out of the tree hollow and embraced them. They looked after them like their own children. They raised them with care. The children grew rapidly. They distinguished themselves from their peers with their intelligence and virtues. The youngest among them turned out to be wiser and braver than the others. They named this little boy Bukuhan. When Bukuhan grew up to be a valiant young man, the Yugar people chose him as their Hakan ruler. A golden age was experienced in the Yugar land during Bukuhan's reign. The country became rich, the people multiplied. Everyone was happy. This blessed child, sent by God via a tree, had brought abundance to his nation. Years flowed like water. Bukuhan ruled in peace. Many Kagans from his lineage came to power. Yugar lands expanded. They became famous around. After a long time passed, a Kagan named Ulok Taigan ascended the throne in the Yugar country. Ulok Taigan was a warrior. He engaged in many wars with neighboring states. He was in constant struggle, especially with the Chinese Empire in the south. Armies confronted each other many times. Bloody clashes took place. These wars were causing great damage to both sides. Ulok Taigan finally decided to seek the path of peace. He wanted to end the hostility by establishing kinship with the Chinese. For this, he intended to marry one of his sons, Prince Goli Taigan, to the daughter of the Chinese emperor. The Chinese palace looked warmly on this offer. However, they put forward a condition. In exchange for giving the princess, they asked the Yugar Kagan to give one of the most precious assets in his country as a gift. This was an object considered sacred for the Yugars, the Kutlu Dok, sacred mountain rock. Kutlu Dok was a huge rock located at the foot of the Tengri Tian Shan mountains. This rock, in the belief of the Yugars, was the symbol of the nation's Kut, that is, its fortune and welfare. Knowing this power, the Chinese demanded Kutlu Dok as the princess's dowry. Ulok Taigan and his son Gali Taigan thought a lot about this request. Yugar Beys objected, saying, "This rock is the sacred trust of our nation. It cannot be given." But the young Prince Gully finally agreed for the sake of peace desire. He accepted the decision to give Kutlu Dok to the Chinese to stop the wars and protect his people. Moving the huge rock from its place was, of course, not easy. The Chinese made subtle plans. They built gigantic piles of wood around Kutlu Dok. They burned fires for days. When the mountain glowed red in flames, they poured vinegar on it. Under the effect of the vinegar, the rock cracked with a great noise. It broke into small pieces. The Chinese loaded the giant rock pieces onto their carts and set off for their country, while Kutlu Dok was torn from the bosom of the Yugars and taken away. All living things in nature mourned. According to legend, even the mountains groaned. Birds cried out in their own languages. Wolves cried howling. Predatory birds drew circles in the air and screamed bitterly. Horses bowed their heads and did not neigh. Sheep stopped bleating. Each was saddened by this ominous departure. All creatures seemed to have sensed it. It was as if the fortune of the Yuga land had been taken away. Only 7 days after Kutlu Dok was taken to China, a disaster occurred in the Yuga palace. The young prince, Goli Taigen, suddenly fell ill and died. The valiant prince, who was healthy until yesterday, closed his eyes to life within a week. His death plunged the Yuga, Kagan, Yulok, Taigen, and all the people into deep mourning. However, the disasters did not end there. Before long, famine broke out in the country. Rain stopped, fields dried up, animals perished. The earth seemed to have lost its abundance. Whispers began among the people. The sacred mountain is gone. Our state's cut fortune is extinguished, because ominous events were coming one after another. There was neither peace nor abundance left in the Yuga country. People had to struggle with hunger and drought. The Yuga beys and people gathered in despair and reached a decision. God is offended with us. The sacred rock protecting us is gone from our hands. These lands will no longer benefit us. There is no remedy but to find a new home and migrate, they said. Thus, they were forced to leave their tents and cities and migrate to other lands. A great migration preparation began. Leaving behind the ancestral lands where they had lived for years devastated everyone, but they thought they would perish if they stayed. The Yuga Kagan mounted his horse at the head of his people. They set out on the roads in convoys. A long journey began toward the west and southwest. They were leaving behind the Hulin mountain, their blessed memories, and their ancestors' graves. Every departing Yuga turned and looked at the Tengri mountains one last time, shed tears. With laments on their tongues and pain in their hearts, they continued on the road. As a result of this great migration, the Yugas left around their motherland, Tukon, and settled in new lands like Turfon and Kashgar. According to historical sources, this migration took place in the mid-9th century AD. The epic narrative attributes this event to a divine cause. Since the sacred rock was gone from their hands, Tengri punished them. Perhaps he directed them to the migration path to draw a new destiny. The migration epic thus explains a historical truth with mythological language. In the migration epic, the importance Yugas attach to their sacred values is clearly seen. Kutlu Dok is not just a piece of rock, but is accepted as the foundation of the welfare of a whole nation. Giving it to foreigners is equated with giving away one's own fortune and abundance. Indeed, the epic tells that the Yugas are forced to abandon their homeland. But the responsible party for this painful event is their own decision. This legend reveals how vital the spiritual values of a nation can be and the importance of Kut in national life. Other epics and legends, the epic of Alp Atunga, a legendary Turkish Khan who lived in very ancient times, appears especially. In rumors belonging to the period of the Sokas, that is, the Sith, Alp Atunga is a ruler famous for his courage and heroism. The person mentioned as a Frasiab in Iran's national epic, the Shahnameh, is accepted to be the same as Alp Atunga. According to rumor, Alp Atunga was ambushed and killed by the trickery of the famous Iranian wrestler Rostam during the Iran-Turan Wars. His death created great mourning among the Turkish people, and this pain was expressed with the elegy known as the Alp Atunga Sagu. Verses from this elegy are included in Kaskalak Mahmut's work Divanu Lugati TTRKI. The verses in this elegy express the people's mourning. Alpatunga, Galdu Mu. Izos Agen, Kaldi Mi. Gelek, Sion Aldem, MD Urek, YRTLR. Has Alp Atunga died? Has the world remained solitary, bad? Has Felek fate, time taken its revenge? Now the heart is torn. These lines translate to modern English roughly as, has Alp Atunga died? Is the world left desolate? Has cruel fate taken its revenge? Are brave hearts filled with great pain? In these lines of lament, the Turkish nation expresses the deep grief felt over the death of its hero. The Shu epic. This epic tells of the struggle of the Scythian, that is, Sarka Turks, against Alexander the Great of Macedonia. The hero of the epic, Shu, is a young Turkish Khan. According to rumor, when Alexander went on a campaign to the east, he advanced as far as the Turkish lands. Although ruler Shu fought hard battles, he had to leave his lands and retreat to the east in the face of Alexander's superior army. However, 24 families who did not migrate with him remained in the west and did not bow to Alexander. These families are accepted as the ancestors of the tribes that would later be called Turkmen, that is, Turkmen. The Shu epic is an epic that conveys a historical event by mythologizing it. It symbolizes the resistance of the Turks against a conqueror like Alexander the Great and their effort to protect their identity. The Attila epic, the life of Hun Emperor. Attila has also found a place in the Turkish epic tradition. The Attila epic describes the heroisms and conquests of Western Hun ruler Attila in an epic style. Attila, known as the Scourge of God in Western sources because he struck fear into Europe, is praised as a just and brave Khan in Turkish rumors. The epic tells of Attila gathering the Hun tribes starting from his childhood days, making the Roman Empire tremble, and finally becoming famous worldwide until the end of his life. Although Attila is a historical figure, the stories formed around him gained a legendary character over time and became the subject of an epic in Turkish folk memory. Basat killing TPGs. This legendary story, located among the Deed Korkut tales, is a striking story describing the courage and determination of the Agus Turks. TPGs is a one-eyed giant creature born from the union of humans and jinns. His body cannot be wounded by almost any weapon, because as soon as he was born, a fairy placed a magic ring on his body. Only the single eye on his forehead is his weak point. One day, TPGs haunts the Oghuz tribe. He kidnaps people and attacks the tents. Although Oghuz Beys fight against this monster many times, they cannot succeed. As a last resort, Deed Korkut steps in and tries to make a deal with TPGs. Even Basat's own brother becomes one of TPG's victims. The Aghuz find the remedy in stopping his attacks in exchange for giving the monster to humans and 500 sheep every day. But this situation devastates the people. Finally, the hero Basat takes action to end this cruelty. Basat is a brave young man who grew up suckling the milk of a grey wolf when he was little. He challenges TPGs and goes to his lair alone. Acting cunningly, he sneaks up to the giant while TPG sleeps at night. He heats his sword in the hot fire, plunges it into TPG's single eye, and manages to blind him. Losing his eye, TPGs goes mad with rage and tries to kill Basat. The two struggle for days. Finally, Basat defeats TPGs, cuts off his head, and kills the monster. Thus, he saves the Oghuz land from this scourge. Although this story is not as old as the Oghuz Kagan epic, it is considered an important part. of Turkish mythology with the motifs it contains, such as the one-eyed monster and defeating the monster with trickery. The legend of Deli Dumrel, another famous story of Deed Korkat, is the story of Deli Dumrel. Deli Dumrel is a brave but arrogant Oghuz hero. He takes tribute from those who cross the bridge he built over a river and does all kinds of crazy things to prove his bravery in his own way. One day, he sees a young man die near his bridge. He is disturbed by the angel of death, Azrael, taking a life, and challenges him, shouting, "If you are brave, face me, take my life." Upon this insolent behavior, Azrael comes to take Deli Dumrel's life. When Deli Dumrel sees Azrael in front of him, he is terrified and understands the value of his life. He begs Azrael to forgive him. However, divine decree does not change. Dumrel finally begs God and tries to find a sacrifice instead of his own life. He laments, "Is there anyone to give their life in place of mine?" First, he goes to his father and mother, but neither wants to give their own life. Upon this, his loyal wife appears and says, "I am willing to die in your place." Deli Dumrel is very moved by this sacrifice. He is ashamed of his own selfishness in the face of the greatness of his wife's love. God sees this event and, thinking Deli Dumrel has passed the test, rewards them. He orders Azrael to spare the lives of Deli Dumrel and his wife. Also, he takes the lives of Dumrel's mother and father and bestows the life given to them upon the young couple. Thus, Deli Dumrel and his wife live a long life. This story tells the power of love that defeats even death and the value of giving up arrogance and reaching humility. It also emphasizes the importance given to family and spouse in Turkish culture. The Manas epic, one of the longest epics of the Turkish world. Manas is a magnificent epic belonging to the Kyrgyz Turks. This epic, reaching hundreds of thousands of verses, tells of the struggle of hero Manas, his sons, and grandsons against various enemies, primarily China. The Manas epic is an oral treasure that transmits the history, beliefs, and values of the Kyrgyz people for generations. Although there are Islamic elements in the epic, many motifs it contains bear traces of ancient Turkish mythology. Sacred, mountains, divine messages given in dreams, guardian spirits, and epic heroisms. In this respect, Manas is a continuation and a rich example of the Turkish mythological tradition. The Kroklu epic. Emerging in the Ottoman period, Kroklu is a folk epic that, although not containing mythological elements, is considered one of the last links of the Turkish epic tradition. It tells of the rebellion against oppression and the adventures of Kroklu, a valiant folk hero. This epic spread from language to language and formed its own variants in different Turkish communities. Kroklu's horse, Kirot, his magic sword, and the folk songs he voiced with his saz have become legendary in the hearts of the people. All these narratives show how rich and diverse Turkish mythology and epic tradition are. The ancient beliefs, value judgments, and imaginations of the Turks are embodied in these stories. Countless motifs, from warrior heroes to wise guides, from giants to fairy girls, from legendary horses to sacred wolves, form the building blocks of this cultural heritage. Virtues such as courage, justice, loyalty, family love, and devotion to God are emphasized in the epics. These legends, which have reached the present day and are still told, are an integral part of the cultural identity of the Turkish nation and will continue to live for generations. This concludes our journey into the depths of Central Asian Turkic mythology, extending from the roots of the birch tree to the peak of the heavens. This mythology bequeathed to us not only the gods, but also the eternity of the soul and the importance of ancestors. My life is governed by the cycle around the pole star Demir Kazakh and the balance between the roots of the world tree and the branches of heaven. The balance between Erlik Khan's power in the underworld and Ilgin's grace in the sky determines the fate of individual life and the Turkic tribes. These legends emphasize the sacredness of the woman Ume Anna and the guidance of the wolf Bozkurt. Having felt the guidance of our ancestors in every aspect of life, don't forget to subscribe for our next adventure, perhaps ancient Celtic mythology